Today we're going to talk about broad axes. A broad axe is really broad, and that's how it gets its name as compared to a regular axe. We'll talk about broad axes and then go into talking about an adze and how an adze works as well. This is a common American broad axe right here. What makes a broad axe different than a regular hatchet is the fact that a broad axe is flat on one side and has the curve on the other side. As you can see, the one on the right, your broad axe, is flat on one side and has a curvature in on the other side. And beside it on the left-hand side is a common American axe, and you can see how it tapers in on both sides. And that's the difference between an axe and a broad axe. When using a broad axe, you cut a tree down, you've got the log laying here on the ground, you put your leg up against the side of the log, and you walk along and chop, chop, chop. You don't actually swing this. That's why it's got the short handle. You don't need to swing it. There's a lot of weight here. And when you drop that down, that weight alone will chop the wood off the side of the log. As you get that side flattened off, you would roll the log onto its next side and do the same thing. And you do that 2, 3, 4 times if you want to square it off all the way around. And one of the things I want to point out is look at the handle. The handle, it doesn't come out straight. It actually curves down away, and that's so when you're using it, you don't bust your knuckles up against the wood. Now, you'll find broad axes like this with straight handles sometimes also. Usually those are handles that somebody's replaced the original handle because it broke or something like that. Now, if you ever find an axe head like this and you think, oh, it doesn't have a handle, I'm not going to buy it. Don't be afraid to give it a try to make your own handle. You can make it straight, but if you really want to get into it, you can try to do that curve in there. So here you have an American broad axe compared to a European broad axe. You can see the difference here and the size, but you can see how they're basically the same, flat on one side and they curve in on the other. Now, a European broad axe has this long tapered point up here. They were also called a goose wing axe because that reminded them of a goose wing. Why they did that, it's hard to tell. But they thought they had to have that long stretched out point on there. And so that's how you can tell a European broad axe. Although a few of these were still made here in the United States when they first started coming over, especially in the Pennsylvania area with the Germans. They made them like this. After a while, they refined them down to a more equally sided. It still has the same amount of weight here, but some of the weight ends up down here instead. And they decided to make them more like that. And so those are American style broad axes. I'm still learning. I think like everybody else who collects tools or collects anything, you learn all the time. So if anybody knows why they made this with a tall point on it like that, don't be afraid to send us a comment and a reply and let us know so we can pass that knowledge on to future generations. Here we have another broad axe. Looks a little different. This is more of what's called a broad hatchet. It's much smaller. You can see that handle still sways away. This is a handle. Yes, I made this one because it didn't come with a handle. But you can see the different size there. Still has the flat side and the curved side, just like the big models would have. This is a cooper's hatchet. When the coopers were making their barrel staves, those barrel staves, yeah, they were curved, but they also taper from a narrow top to a wide middle down to a taper again. And this is the tool they would use to do that tapering work with. They would chop like this and then flip that over and chop it. So now you're starting to get that curve. And then they would take it to a shaving horse or something like that to do the finishing work with. But these were made with a handle and made in a small size, and the handle tips away. And you really would hold this clear up here by the head so that when you're using it, it's more of an extension of your hand to do the chopping with. Now, this is a European broad axe. It's a little different than the look you see on some of these others, whereas this one is pretty well solid. This has got the opening in here, and you can put your hand in there and really get in there close, and when you do your chopping, and you do more detailed work that way. Here we have a wooden shoemaker's broad axe. Again, that same familiar flat side on one and curved on the other. You see how the handle really curves on this one? Again, that is for close-in work, and it tends to make you pull your hand down here lower down when you're using it because of that curvature. A wooden shoemaker's hatchet, one way you can tell you've got a wooden shoemaker's hatchet is this little beard right here. They tended to put that on all their hatchets. Here we have a Russian axe. It too has this beard on here, But if you look closely and look down the blade, this is not a broad axe. It curves in from both sides. But the Russians, they wanted to put this little beard on there. We think maybe that was to help preserve the handle so it doesn't hit against the wood. And if you've ever used an axe to chop up wood, that's usually the first part that deteriorates right in there. So they put that little beard to help keep that from happening. Now here we have an adze. If you were to find just the metal part and didn't have a handle on it, you're going to see that there's a square opening right here. If it has a round opening, then it's not an adze, it's a hoe for digging into dirt. And they used a round handle on that as opposed to a square handle. The reason that this is made the way it is, you'll see there's no wedge or anything holding that head on. How does that stay on? Well, these are designed so that the handle will slip down and off the handle all the way down, and then you can sharpen the blade. Otherwise, when you went up to your big sharpening stone to sharpen this, your handle would be in the way. So you had to hammer them off of there, sharpen them, and then put them back on again. To put them back on, you would slide them on like that, and that's as far as it will go. It's good and tight. We talked earlier about broad axes and how you'd stand beside the log and chop, chop, chop. With an adze, instead of standing alongside the log, you'd actually stand on top of the log, and you would swing this right between your feet like that. Just chop, chop like that, and walk along and flatten off that log. You get to the end, you turn it over, do the next side, and so on. When you swing it like that, yeah, it was a dangerous job. These were also known as toe removers. An adze was a common item back in the day. Every farmer, woodworker had an adze. If you were a farmer and you were going to do a little bit of adzing work, that was fine. But if you were going to do a lot of adze work, say building a barn or a house, then they expected you to bring in the professional adze person. What the professional adze person did for a living was to make railroad ties. If you think about in the 1800s, the railroads were going across the nation. They needed millions and millions of railroad ties. They just couldn't get enough of them. So that's what they did for a living. When the adze person would show up, says, okay, now what are you building here? I need to know. If they're going to be floor joists, we need to just adze off one side. Leave the bottoms rounded. We don't have to worry about the bark and all that. If you go into old homes today, you'll see that. Some of the bark is still clinging to those logs, but they're flattened on one side and the floor joists lay on top of that. It's going to be a log cabin. We need to adze off two sides, the inside and the outside. We'll leave the tops rounded so we can put our chinking in there to seal off the building. Or are these going to be used for exposed beams up in the roof and stuff like that? If so, then we need to adze off on all four sides. So when the adze person would show up, like you say, you would have to ask some questions. Do you need these logs to be fully adzed, or do you need them to be done half adzed? Now, I don't swear, but some people say today that that's where that saying comes from things being half. We'll be talking more about these in the future, but today I want to talk a little bit about a hand adze. So instead of having the long handle, they're short handled like this. They're for more of an extension of your hand when you're doing the work. This one has, you can see, the curve to it for like making bowls and those kind of things. And this is called a stirrup adze because it's got this stirrup that goes around there and holds the blade. Also, the reason these are made this way is so you can take these apart and sharpen the blade without the handle getting in the way when you're trying to use your grindstone. Here also is an interesting part. I demonstrate on how wooden shoes are made. And one of the tools they use is a tool to take out this portion right here. They make a kerf cut in there and cut down so far. A kerf is a cut that goes part way through, but not all the way through. They determine where the heel needs to be. They make their kerf cut, and then they need to remove this piece of wood. To do that, they use a hand adze, just like that. And you can see how that fits right in there and takes that wood out for them. I've collected tools for about 35 years, and I run across different tools. This is one I use. I had this one for many, many years. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this tool. It's a great tool. You can see again how it's an extension of your hand, but they made better tools as well. I happened to get a hold of a second one. Very similar, a little bigger, but very similar. But this is a much, much higher quality tool. Now, how do you know that? Well, you can tell by the sound of it. And here we go. I'm going to take this one and I'm just going to rap on it a little bit. Not a whole lot of ringing going on there, but this is a much higher quality tool right here. And look what happens. Hear that ring? Now, if you're a blacksmith, you're thinking that's really sweet. I like that. Now, how they get that sound like that, that's a higher carbon content metal. Very expensive to make that kind of metal, but you can see the ring in it. Like rings like a bell. It's a much better metal. A lot of times when you find chisels and such, they will have what they call high carbon steel on the very tip of them, because that's where the real cutting edge is, and they want that to hold that edge, so they make it out of high carbon steel, but only on the edge because it's so expensive, and they don't make the whole tool out of it. But somebody decided they wanted to make this one out of all high carbon steel. Makes for a very, very excellent tool. Well, you may be curious where I get some of my information. I'm not a wealth of knowledge by any means, but I do the research. When people ask me questions, I really like that. What I don't like is when I don't know the answer. You know how guys are, to be able to say, I don't know, well, we do have to say that once in a while. And then we need to go out and do the research and find out what exactly is the answer to that. And there are many authors out there who have great books on this subject, and if you go look those up, you'll really enjoy those as well. Come back in the future, we'll be doing videos on such things as pedal treadle tools and those kind of things. You see some back here in the background. If you know of any stories about tools or things, I don't know everything. I'd love to learn from you as well, especially if you know some like funny stories about tools and how they were used and how they got their names. Let me know, and I may use those in future videos as well. Please like and subscribe to our channel. That lets us know if you really like what we're doing.